What happens when someone screams at you in court and you give them the lesson they never expected? This is bullsh*T. You don't know what I've been through. The teenager's voice echoed through the Providence Municipal Court, his face red with rage, finger pointing directly at Judge Frank Caprio. The courtroom fell silent. But what Judge Caprio said next would change this young man's life forever. What followed that outburst would become the most watched courtroom moment in internet history. It was a typical Tuesday morning in Providence Municipal Court. Judge Frank Caprio, the 77-year-old judge who had become an internet sensation for his compassionate approach to justice, was hearing traffic violation cases. Marcus Thompson, an 18-year-old from South Providence, had been brought in for multiple driving infractions, speeding, reckless driving, and driving without a license. Marcus walked into the courtroom with an attitude that screamed defiance. Baggy clothes, headphones around his neck, and a scowl that could cut glass. He had been in and out of the juvenile system for 3 years. This was supposed to be his last chance before adult court, but Marcus didn't seem to care. Judge Caprio looked at the file before him. Multiple violations, a pattern of disrespect for authority, and a young man who seemed determined to throw his life away. But Caprio had seen this before. Behind the anger, behind the defiance, there was usually pain. But Marcus had no idea that Judge Caprio was about to see right through his tough guy facade. Mr. Thompson, Judge Caprio began with his characteristic gentle tone, I see you're here for several serious violations. Before we proceed, I want to understand something. What's going on in your life that's bringing you back to my courtroom? Marcus rolled his eyes and slouched in his chair. Man, I don't got time for this psychology stuff. Just give me the fine or whatever. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his voice remaining calm. Son, I'm not here to judge your character. I'm here to understand why a young man with your whole life ahead of him keeps making choices that hurt his future. You don't know nothing about my life. Marcus exploded, shooting up from his chair. You sitting up there in your fancy robe, thinking you better than everybody. Nobody expected what Marcus would do next. This is bullsh*T. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what it's like to have nothing, to have everybody give up on you. Marcus was now standing, pointing aggressively at the judge, his voice echoing off the courtroom walls. The bailiff moved forward, but Judge Caprio raised his hand slightly, signaling him to stop. The entire courtroom held its breath. Court officers tensed, ready to intervene. But Judge Caprio just sat there, looking at this angry young man with eyes that showed no judgment, only understanding. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Marcus stood there, breathing heavily, expecting to be thrown in jail for contempt of court. But Judge Caprio did something unexpected. He smiled. You're absolutely right, Marcus, Judge Caprio said quietly. I don't know what you've been through. But I'd like to. Would you tell me? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had expected anger, punishment, handcuffs. Instead, he got compassion from the last place he expected it. What? Marcus's voice cracked slightly, the rage beginning to falter. I said you're right. I don't know your story. But every person who comes into my courtroom has a story, and yours matters to me. So please, tell me what's been happening in your life. Subscribe now and comment what you think about Judge Caprio's approach, because what happens next will completely change how you view justice and leadership. Marcus stood there, completely disarmed. His fists slowly unclenched. The anger that had carried him through 3 years of legal troubles suddenly felt hollow and useless against this unexpected kindness. I don't. Marcus stammered, looking around the courtroom as if seeing it for the first time. Take your time, son, Judge Caprio said gently. There's no rush here. We've got all the time you need. Marcus slowly sank back into his chair, the fight completely gone out of him. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. My mom died when I was 15. Cancer. My dad, he split when I was 10. Been living with my grandmother, but she's got dementia now. I'm trying to take care of her and go to school, but... His voice broke. Judge Caprio nodded, his expression showing genuine concern. That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age. How are you managing all of that? I'm not, Marcus admitted, tears beginning to form in his eyes. I've been working nights at a warehouse, trying to pay for her medicine and food. That's why I was speeding. Boss said if I was late again, I was fired. And driving without a license. I can't afford the fees to get it back after it got suspended. But Judge Caprio wasn't finished uncovering the truth. Tell me about school, Marcus. Are you still enrolled? Marcus looked down at his hands. I had to drop out last month. Couldn't keep up with work and taking care of grandma. She wanders sometimes, forgets where she is. I can't leave her alone. The courtroom was completely silent. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, captivated by this unexpected turn. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, processing what he'd heard. Here was a young man who had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and everyone, the system, his teachers, even the police, had seen only his anger, not his pain. Marcus, look at me, Judge Caprio said firmly but kindly. What you've been doing, taking care of your grandmother, working to support her, trying to be the man of the house at 18, that takes more courage than most adults have. Marcus looked up, confused. But I messed up. I broke the law. Yes, you did. And there are consequences for that. But context matters. Intent matters. And I can see that your heart is in the right place, even if your methods need work. What Judge Caprio did next shocked everyone in that courtroom. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench and did something unprecedented. He walked around to the front of his desk and sat on the edge, bringing himself down to Marcus's level. Son, I want to tell you something. When I was your age, I thought I knew everything. I was angry at the world, angry at circumstances I couldn't control. I made some poor choices too. Marcus looked up, genuinely surprised. You did? Oh yes. I came from a poor Italian immigrant family. My father worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I was angry that we didn't have what other families had. I was angry that life seemed unfair. And you know what that anger got me? Nothing but more problems. Judge Caprio paused, making sure Marcus was listening. But one day, a wise man, a judge, actually, told me something that changed my life. He said, Frank, you can stay angry at your circumstances, or you can use them to build something better. The choice is yours. Nobody in that courtroom knew that Judge Caprio was about to offer Marcus something that would change his entire future. Marcus, I'm going to make you a deal. But first, I need to know, do you want to change your life, or do you want to keep being angry at it? Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I want to change. I'm tired of being angry all the time. But I don't know how. Judge Caprio smiled that warm smile that had made him famous. That's the first step, admitting you want something different. Now, here's what we're going to do. Judge Caprio walked back to his bench and pulled out a legal pad. I'm going to dismiss all your charges on one condition. You're going to come back here every month for 6 months, and you're going to tell me how you're doing. Marcus's eyes widened. You're not going to jail me. Son, jail isn't going to help you take care of your grandmother or get your life on track. But accountability will. I want you to get your GED. I want you to get your driver's license legally. And I want you to look into resources for your grandmother's care. But I can't afford. Judge Caprio held up his hand. I'm not finished. I'm also going to connect you with social services to help with your grandmother's care. There are programs designed exactly for situations like yours. And as for your GED, I know a program that provides free classes for young adults in your situation. The transformation happening in Marcus was visible to everyone in that courtroom. "Why are you doing this for me?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking with emotion. Judge Caprio's expression grew serious. "Because, Marcus, I believe that every person deserves a chance to become who they're meant to be. Your circumstances don't define you. Your choices do. And today, you have a choice." Marcus was crying now, no longer trying to hide it. I thought everyone had given up on me." "The world might give up on you, son, but you should never give up on yourself. And as long as you're willing to work for a better life, you'll always have someone in your corner." Judge Caprio returned to his seat and made a note in Marcus's file. "Case dismissed, pending compliance with our agreement. Mr. Thompson, I'll see you back here in 30 days. And Marcus?" "Yes, sir. I'm proud of you for telling the truth today. That took real courage." As Marcus stood to leave, he turned back to Judge Caprio. "Judge, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I was just. You don't need to apologize for feeling frustrated, son. You just need to learn better ways to channel that energy. Now go take care of your grandmother, and I'll see you next month." What happened after Marcus left that courtroom would inspire millions around the world. The video of the exchange, captured by the court's cameras, was posted online later that day. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed over 10 million times. Comments poured in from around the world, praising Judge Caprio's approach to justice. But more importantly, the video caught the attention of Dr. Sarah Williams, a geriatric care specialist in Providence. She reached out to the court, offering to provide free consultation for Marcus's grandmother's care. A local businessman, moved by Marcus's story, offered him a part-time job with flexible hours that would allow him to continue caring for his grandmother while pursuing his GED. The Providence Community College saw the video and reached out to offer Marcus a full scholarship once he completed his GED. But the most amazing part was what happened when Marcus returned to court a month later. Judge Caprio was reviewing cases when Marcus walked in, but he looked different. Gone was the angry, defiant teenager. In his place stood a young man in clean clothes, shoulders back, making eye contact. "Good morning, Judge Caprio," Marcus said respectfully. "Marcus. Good to see you, son. How has your month been?" Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile anyone in that courtroom had seen from him. "It's been good, sir. Really good. I started the GED program like you suggested. And Dr. Williams, she came to see my grandmother. Turns out there are medications that can help with her memory, and she qualified for a program that provides a caregiver for a few hours each day." Judge Caprio beamed. "That's wonderful news. And how are you feeling?" "Different," Marcus said honestly. "For the first time in years, I feel like I have hope. Like maybe things can get better." "They can, son. They absolutely can. But you're the one doing the hard work. I just pointed you in the right direction." The ripple effects of that day in court continued to spread. 6 months later, Marcus returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom one final time. This time, he brought his grandmother with him. She was more alert, more present, thanks to the medication and care Dr. Williams had arranged. "Judge Caprio," Marcus said, standing proudly beside his grandmother, "I wanted you to meet the most important person in my life. Grandma, this is the judge I told you about." Marcus's grandmother, a small woman with kind eyes, looked up at Judge Caprio. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for seeing the good in my grandson when no one else would." Marcus had completed his GED with honors. He had been accepted to Providence Community College with a full scholarship. He had a steady job and a stable home situation. Most importantly, he had hope. "Marcus," Judge Caprio said, "I want you to know that everything you've accomplished, you did yourself. I just helped remove some of the barriers." "No, sir," Marcus replied firmly. "You did something more important than that. You showed me that I mattered. For the first time in my life, an adult looked at me and saw potential instead of problems. Share this video if you believe in second chances and comment below what you learned from Judge Caprio's approach to justice. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench one more time and walked over to Marcus. He extended his hand, and when Marcus shook it, the judge pulled him into a hug. "I'm proud of you, son. Your parents would be proud of you too." As Marcus and his grandmother left the courtroom for the final time, Judge Caprio returned to his bench with tears in his eyes. In 30 years on the bench, he had seen thousands of cases, but this one reminded him why he had become a judge in the first place. Later that day, a reporter asked Judge Caprio about his approach to cases like Marcus's. His response became a viral quote in its own right. "Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about understanding. It's about seeing the person behind the problem and asking not just what did they do wrong, but what can we do to help them do better." When we lead with compassion instead of condemnation, we don't just change cases, we change lives. The transformation of Marcus Thompson became a case study in restorative justice programs across the country. Law schools began showing the video to students as an example of how compassionate leadership can achieve what punitive measures alone cannot. Marcus, now 24, graduated from Providence Community College with a degree in social work. He works with at-risk youth, sharing his story and showing them that one moment of poor judgment doesn't have to define their entire future. And every year on the anniversary of that day in court, Marcus visits Judge Caprio, not as a defendant, but as a friend. They talk about life, about dreams, about the power of second chances. The lesson from that day lives on in everyone who witnessed it. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a leader can do is not to show their authority, but to show their humanity. Judge Caprio proved that day that true justice doesn't just punish wrongdoing, it transforms lives. When Marcus had screamed at him in anger, Judge Caprio could have responded with the full force of the law. Instead, he responded with something more powerful: understanding, compassion, and an unwavering belief in human potential. That moment taught everyone watching that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the voice that listens, that understands, and that refuses to give up on people even when they've given up on themselves. Frank Caprio didn't just destroy Marcus's anger that day. He destroyed the belief that angry, hurt young people can't be reached. He proved that with the right approach, even the most defiant hearts can be opened, and even the most lost souls can find their way home. 10 years later, the impact of that courtroom moment continues to reverberate through the justice system. Marcus Thompson, now 28, has become one of the most sought-after youth counselors in Rhode Island. His story has been featured in documentaries, academic papers, and training programs for judges across America. But more importantly, he has personally mentored over 200 at-risk teenagers, many of whom faced similar circumstances to his own. "Every time I meet an angry kid who thinks the world has given up on them, I see myself at 18, Marcus reflects during a recent interview. And I remember that all it took was one person to see past my anger to my pain." The Marcus Thompson Foundation, which he established in 2029, provides emergency financial assistance to young caregivers who are struggling to balance education, work, and family responsibilities. The foundation has helped over 1,500 young people avoid the criminal justice system entirely by addressing the root causes of their struggles before they escalate. Judge Caprio's influence extended far beyond just one case. The Caprio method has been adopted by family courts in 23 states. Young judges travel to Providence to shadow Judge Caprio and learn his approach to restorative justice. The University of Rhode Island Law School now offers a course called Compassionate Jurisprudence, using Judge Caprio's cases as primary source material. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who heads the Criminal Justice Reform Program at Harvard University, studied Judge Caprio's methods for 5 years. Her research showed that defendants who appeared before Judge Caprio had a recidivism rate of just 12%, compared to the national average of 68%. What Judge Caprio understood intuitively, Dr. Walsh explains, is that punishment without understanding rarely changes behavior. But when you address the underlying issues that led to criminal behavior, you don't just prevent future crimes, you transform lives. The ripple effects reached the highest levels of government. In 2031, Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan cited Judge Caprio's approach in a majority opinion, writing, "Justice is not merely the application of law, but the application of law with wisdom, compassion, and an understanding of human nature." The case she referenced was remarkably similar to Marcus's story, a young defendant whose criminal behavior stemmed from overwhelming family responsibilities. The court's decision established new precedents for considering socio-economic factors in sentencing, directly influenced by the principles Judge Caprio had demonstrated. But perhaps the most powerful testament to Judge Caprio's impact came from an unexpected source. In 2032, Marcus received a call that would bring his story full circle. A 17-year-old named David Rodriguez had been arrested for the same violations Marcus had faced 14 years earlier. David was angry, defiant, and convinced that no one understood his struggles as the primary caregiver for his disabled mother. Marcus drove to the Providence courthouse, walked into the same courtroom where his life had changed, and sat in the gallery as David appeared before Judge Caprio, now 87 years old but still sharp, still compassionate, still changing lives one case at a time. The exchange was eerily familiar. David shouted at the judge, accused him of not understanding his life, and seemed ready to throw away his future out of anger and frustration. Judge Caprio responded exactly as he had with Marcus, with patience, with questions, with genuine interest in understanding the young man's story. When it was over, Marcus approached David in the hallway. "Excuse me," Marcus said to the angry teenager. "My name is Marcus Thompson. I was exactly where you are 14 years ago, in that same courtroom, yelling at that same judge." David looked at him skeptically. "Yeah. So what happened to you?" Marcus smiled. "That judge saved my life. And now I want to help save yours." Over the following months, Marcus worked with David using the same principles Judge Caprio had taught him: patience, understanding, and an unwavering belief in human potential. David completed his GED, got his mother enrolled in a care program, and enrolled in community college. Today, David works alongside Marcus at the foundation, helping other young people navigate the same challenges they once faced. The legacy continues to grow. Judge Caprio officially retired in 2033 at age 88, but not before training a new generation of judges in his methods. His retirement ceremony was attended by over 500 people whose lives he had touched, not just defendants, but their families, social workers, attorneys, and community leaders. Marcus gave the keynote speech that day, standing at the same podium where he had once screamed in anger. 14 years ago, I stood in Judge Caprio's courtroom as a broken, angry young man who had given up on himself, Marcus told the crowd. Today, I stand here as a husband, father, college graduate, and advocate for youth justice, not because Judge Caprio was easy on me, but because he saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Judge Caprio, seated in the front row with tears in his eyes, mouthed the words, "I'm proud of you," to Marcus. Today, the courthouse in Providence bears a simple plaque. It reads, "In honor of Judge Frank Caprio, who showed us that justice is not about punishment, but about redemption." Marcus stops by to read that plaque every year. He brings his own children now, twin daughters who will grow up knowing that their father was once lost, but was found by a judge who refused to give up on people. The final lesson is perhaps the most important. Leadership isn't about having power over people, it's about empowering people to become their best selves. Judge Caprio never used his authority to diminish others, he used it to lift them up. In a world that often responds to anger with more anger, Judge Caprio showed a different way. He proved that sometimes the most radical thing a leader can do is to respond to hostility with humanity. Marcus Thompson's transformation didn't happen overnight, but it began with one moment when a wise judge chose to see the person behind the problem, the pain behind the anger, and the potential behind the mistakes. That moment changed one life, which changed another life, which changed another. Today, thousands of young people have been touched by the ripple effects of Judge Caprio's compassion, proving that true leadership creates leaders.